I'm Fernando Pereira. I currently work at Google DeepMind. I've been at Google for almost 16 years, working in the intersection of artificial intelligence and language, also some various machine learning projects, a variety of both basic and application projects in that general area. I have a relationship to Edinburgh since I did my PhD here. I came from Lisbon, where I had an undergraduate in math, got a scholarship from the British Council to come and study AI here in Edinburgh in 1977. So I've been working in the field since then. In fact, the reason I came to Edinburgh is because I was very excited about the relationships between logic, language, and artificial intelligence, and the Edinburgh department, artificial intelligence department back then was kind of very well known for the work in computational logic programming, and that connected directly with the idea of using logic to represent language structure and language meaning. So that's why I came. Oh, it was great. I mean, we were ready for a change. We both somewhat adventurous. Actually, my wife more than I, and we wanted to try new things. And it was a bit difficult for her because she could not work given the terms of the visa. But on the other hand, we got our firstborn here in Edinburgh, and so we have very good memories of wonderful memories of having our first child here. And Edinburgh was and is an incredibly friendly place. And we lived in just close to the department, so my office in the department was in Hope Park Square, which is no longer, as far as I know, part of the university, but it was a set of small buildings close to the meadows, and we just lived across the meadows. It was a very curious setup because there were two different units doing AI, right? There was the machine intelligence research unit that Donald Mickey led, and then there was the Department of Artificial Intelligence that Bernard Meltzer led. And the two didn't talk to each other. There was a little bit of in fact, I'll give you a little sort of hindsight story. So when I joined, I was very, as I said, interested in logic and applications of logic to logic techniques to understanding language. That was a very different line than what Donald Mickey was working on, which was early work in machine learning, based on using techniques of rule learning. And back then, those two worlds did not mix at all. And it's only later that I started to appreciate the work that Donald Mickey and this group did. We had no communication at all between the two groups, at least not for us students. That was that other world. So they would do two parts of Hope Park Square. One is the department where I used to, where I interacted with faculty and the other students, and then this machine intelligence research unit was seen as like a foreign country. Oh, that's an interesting question. I would say that two things. One is that I had read a lot in English. I wasn't a very fluent speaker of English, but I read a lot of English literature and technical, not just technical books, like of course lots of mathematics and computing books and so on. While between my undergraduate and the time that I worked in a research lab in Portugal, but also a lot of fiction, and so I'm very interested in the English speaking culture and language. So I was quite attuned to some of the cultural registers and the language use, but of course there's a big difference between that and being a fluent speaker, right? But it also gives you a bit of a perspective, right? You look from the outside at this language, this object, different language machine and linguistic culture, and you maybe observe things that those who are native speakers have not consciously observed. So that, I don't know whether it made the change, but it really made it easier to think of a language as an object of study, not just as something that you immersed in, which is always kind of a complicated relationship between being a user of a language versus someone who studies language. One thing I would say is that when I came, there was actually very, very little work in language here, which I didn't realize in the AI department now. But on the other hand, there was the linguistics and philosophy had a really strong language and language semantics group. People like Ewan Klein and Barry Richards, and I attended their seminars and even presented, and that gave me a lot of help in kind of creating a context for my work. And mainly I worked with in sort of using logic programming, and being involved actually in the early development of the Edinburgh Prologue with David Warren and applying that to the representation of linguistic structure and language semantics, which I ended up doing my PhD on. Well, so let me give you a little bit of a bit more of the context here. So I had a scholarship for 3 years, and then because I hadn't finished my PhD yet, because I was both doing my PhD work, but also spending a lot of time working on the implementation of Edinburgh Prologue. I was a bit slow, let's put it that way, and at doing both things together. So I got a job as a research assistant in computer-aided design in the Department of Architecture, which was an interesting side effort. But they were interested in using the use of logic programming for representing various problems in architectural design and graphics. So I worked there for 2 years. That was my full-time job, if you will, but also finishing my doctorate, continuing to work on Edinburgh Prologue. Now, during that period, I was also looking at what do I do next? And the situation in Portugal was difficult in the sense there were not that many academic jobs, and it was a very slow and complex transition from the pre-democracy times, and the economy was, not doing well. So in the meanwhile, I had written some papers that attracted attention some folks in the U.S., and I got, eventually got a job offer to go and join SRI International in California, Menlo Park, and that seemed a reasonable idea. We're ready for a change, and there we went. There wasn't a lot of thought except that, California, the weather is like Portugal. That wasn't too bad. And then we arrive in the September of 1982 to the wettest winter in California history in decades, which was not maybe the best welcoming that you could expect from a supposedly Mediterranean climate. I had never been faculty, right? So Penn was looking for someone coming with a different perspective from the outside to both join the faculty and actually be department chair. And in my innocence, I accepted that offer because I was interested in actually, seeing what. And partly is because I also one of the side interests I have, which I had not explored until then, is the relationship between, natural language, formal languages and the potential application to biology and bioinformatics. So there was an opportunity to collaborate with people in that area at Penn. which turned out to be different from what I expected, but really quite interesting. So that's the period I did. It's a different experience. So I continued to work extensively on machine learning, some learning theory, some applications in language and to sentiment classification, to parsing, to a number of other problems, and had some really great students that did most of the work while I was doing academic administration and teaching classes. But also started some work in bioinformatics, and mainly around gene prediction from doing analysis of sequences for gene prediction, and that turned out to be quite an interesting set of projects. Between AT&T and Penn, I took a sort of a coding sabbatical at a startup based in Pittsburgh in Provo, Utah, called Whizbang Labs. It doesn't exist any longer, but that was doing information extraction from the web using machine learning. And during that period, had some very fruitful collaborations with Andrew McCallum and John Lafferty, and for a complicated sequence of reasons, we ended up creating inventing this statistical model of sequences called conditional random fields that turned out to be, very effective and influential, which I ended up then using for in our gene prediction work, and many people applied to many other things in language analysis, sequence tagging, other bioinformatics problems, and basically was the most effective way of doing representation of sequence problems as in language and in biology, until deep learning for sequences, in particular development of transformers, really started dominating, and that was much more recently than that. Okay. So there were a couple of reasons. So a number of former colleagues of mine had moved to Google, and they kept, probing me. We'd love to have you, we'd like to join, and so on. And for personal reasons, mainly, family constraints, child in school, those kinds of things. We were not quite ready to move, and I enjoyed my time as a faculty member. But came a time when I wanted to take a break. There was sabbatical after my stint as department chair, and various things came together. And one intellectual thing for me was really important is thinking about how can language AI, all the work we've been doing with trying to develop AI, machine learning techniques for language, can it really have impact, an effect? And the one place I saw that could try to influence is search engines, because search engines, above anything at the time, have this interface to millions of users. Millions of users use language in different ways and use different languages, and so it's a rich field for trying to apply these techniques to improve the quality of the search results, to improve how well the search engine understands its users. And so I sort of felt if I don't try this now, I'm going to regret it. And so I was convinced to come to Google. First, I was on leave from Penn, and eventually, as the work developed and I started getting some traction, I concluded that opportunity was there. I just had to work hard to make it happen. So I started. I joined to help lead the small group of language researchers that were then in a very small Google research then. And we started working on a few problems, some of which kind of panned out and led to some significant contributions to features in Google search, and then a number of other things that having to do with the applications of machine learning in different parts of the various products. And one thing led to the other. And eventually I came to manage a fairly large group of researchers in multi-locations working on language and on machine learning and some areas of algorithms as well, which has been what I did until a year ago, when I stepped aside to have a much smaller team and just focus on the interface between AI research and the applications of AI in products and figuring out how to do that better. So I mean, I have like two, multiple hats as well. But the one that's the biggest, the thing that consumes most of my time is trying to look at when you think about products we have in the world or we might have that interact with a very large number of people, and these products use language to communicate, both to understand what the user is looking for and to communicate back. Or might be use combinations of language and images. And how do the problems that arise in making those products work better lead to new questions or refined research questions that and have not been solved yet. So one of my premises is that normally people think about, research happens here and then you transfer, if in some applicable research gets transferred to products. I think that's the wrong way to think about it. For us, or at least for me, what's most exciting and important is to think, if I'm creating these, machines that help people do things, the key questions that arise, the key AI questions that arise, is how those machines understand the intent of their users and how do they respond appropriately to that intent? How do they do it, in a way that's safe and effective? And so those are very big problems in AI. And the more we can really inform the research we do with the practical concern, the actual concerns that arise when we have a large number of diverse users, the more likely we are to actually make substantial advances in AI research. I am in the so. Let me give you a little bit of perspective that actually relates to my talk this afternoon. I think language generally is a tool that has co-evolved with humans and human society. And as any tool, it has, it's evolved for reasons, right? It evolved for evolutionary success. In, say, social coordination, in effectiveness of social arrangements, and ability to train young members of the species to do things and persuade each other to collaborate and also deceive each other. So these tools have good uses and bad uses, and language in society is well known. We all know about, say, lying, disinformation, manipulation. These are not things that arose yesterday. They've been with us in human culture ever since there was language, right? So what I see, chatbots and language, large language models, language AI, is the latest iteration of that tool making, and as such has both immense potential in helping us be more effective at using our other tools, because as we all realize in dealing, say, with computers today, they are very difficult to get to do the right thing for any but a very small number of experts. And to the extent we can make them more accessible to the wider range of people, we can, enable many use cases, which you now already see with, uses of ChatGPT and Bard, than you saw before. On the other hand, like any other tool, you create risks, right? You create risks of those tools being abused for, manipulative, antisocial purposes, and we have to think of it as we think about any other such risk in a very serious way. Now, there's another set of risks, which I think is the risks that some people are very concerned about, which is risks having to do with autonomy. If we have tools that not only respond to us, but that can autonomously go and do complex things on our behalf, how do we know that they're doing things that are, socially useful, that are beneficial? And therefore, it's really important that we put the right safeguards in deployment of autonomous systems. And by the way, this predates AI, right? We have lots of autonomous systems in our world already, and sometimes they go wrong, as we have seen with some recent avionics disasters in commercial aviation. We need to think about the deployment of autonomous systems in society in a very serious and careful way. To the extent that the systems use a language and can, understand their environment more in a much richer way, yes, they can do more complex behaviors that could be maybe more difficult to coordinate and to control. But I think that in general, we're focusing too much on a particular state of technology and not enough on what should be broad safeguards for the deployment of any kind of autonomous system. I recommend always that people who are worried about these questions to read Stanislaw Lem. And in particular, I recommend Peace on Earth, which is a wonderful novel, because Lem was amazing anticipator of many of the concerns with AI. Really calls out some of these challenges of creating autonomous systems, and that are not under clear control from the right set of social processes and therefore can essentially end up doing things that we didn't expect. And that is, I think, quite independent from the specific implementation, which in this case might be through large language models, but could be in many other ways. Oh, no, I mean, I wouldn't say a fan of science fiction. I'm a fan of Stanislaw Lem in particular, partly because his thinking, so I share more than just the interest in his books. I, like him, we grew up in a totalitarian society, and had to, he much more than I had to, tiptoe around the risks of that society. But I was very aware of those risks, and so we're not. I think I appreciate the fact that he was not naive about the uses and misuses of technology and information, and so as a author, I resonate a lot with how he drew from his experience, in totalitarian society to lay out the sort of the drama and tragedy of social living and conditions that have to do with manipulation and oppression and different participants in society trying to achieve purposes that are not broadly beneficial. I think it does, in the sense that I I do not have a sort of a sort of a Pollyanna view of everything will be fine, and also sort of this sort of the sky is falling with the view with respect to technology. I've seen lots of very bad things happen that did not require a lot of technology, and clearly technology can amplify, the inability of bad people and bad governments to do their thing, but I think people get overly focused on the technology and under focused on the structures and the power relationships and the social arrangements and the constitutional arrangements for democratic society, and so I would be much more optimistic about the future independently of technology if I didn't see in how many ways even today without having Skynet at hand, we have so much violence and oppression in any case. So it gives me like a more, if you will, a more tragic view of the situation, which is we've seen these misuses of technology, including language as a technology, over all our history. And what we should be focusing on is how to reduce, not focus on the technology, but on what are the power and social arrangements, what are the economic arrangements that will lead to greatest flourishing. And if we do that, then we also will learn how to use the technology to the benefit of everybody as opposed to oppress others. So I think we need to do both. But again, I challenge this notion that the guardrails are focused on the tool. The guardrails should be focused on what we believe the social arrangements have to be, that balance different interests, like freedom of speech, and also protecting people from abuse and manipulation and so on. So those things are independent of technology. And I think that the overly focusing on particular technologies is causing us to, I think, focus on the wrong things. Now, having said that, I also believe that we should understand the risks of different technologies. We should understand, and that is, so I'll go back to my history. So for a period in my life, actually, as an undergraduate, working part-time, and then a bit between my undergraduate and coming to Edinburgh, I worked quite a lot with civil engineers at a civil engineering laboratory. And I learned by osmosis, if you will, a lot about, in thinking about safety in engineering. A lot of the work that civil engineers do is develop techniques to try to predict the behavior of structures, especially for things like earthquake safety and other kinds of forms of safety. It's always a challenge in engineering to try to be fast and cheap and profitable, but on the other hand, protect people from failures of structures. We see, for instance, a lot of fatalities in earthquakes, as we've seen in places like Morocco and in Turkey and Afghanistan, is bad buildings. So we see that people can be hurt by improperly unsafe engineering. And I think the same applies here. And we have to think about all the engineering we do, whether it is in AI or in structures or in airplanes or in bioengineering, with a clear focus on safety, and so that is something we should be doing in any case. Now, what are the safeguards that we need? Are partly a social trade-off, as social decisions, and societies through its political processes and the other social processes should have a key say on this matter. What safeguards do we need for any deployment of technology, and so both the engineers have to do the homework and understand how to build safe systems, and society has to come up with the rules and the laws that ensure that those the best safety judgments are applied. The same way as we do with medicine and the development of drugs, for example. It's not perfect; it's always changing. But we need to continue this debate and this between engineers that try to build the best thing they can, and society which wants the benefits of that engineering but wants to make sure that it is safely deployed. I don't ever look too far into the future. I'm kind of too firm a believer in the unpredictability of human affairs. I ended up coming to Edinburgh for a bunch of coincidental reasons, and when I tell you a little story. I wrote I was very skeptical applying for this scholarship. I said, "Oh, I'm not going to get it." And then my wife and a friend convinced me to apply. And my friend, who had a car, drove me to put in my application 1 hour before the deadline. The lady who received the application was very skeptical. Oh, this is, who knows? And then, I don't know why I was selected, and things started rolling from there. And in general, I've focused on what can I do to make things better. It can advance the science and technology, can work with people and help them be better at what they do, both as students, as colleagues, as parts of my team. Be careful of what we build and think, about the, risks when that is called for. I don't, I could not anticipate where I would end up, but then, I couldn't anticipate, if I had ended up somewhere else, I couldn't have anticipated that either, right? I just focus on the here and now and what I can do now to make things better. And of course on things that I care about and enjoy, and I'm capable of doing, and do not think very far ahead, because I know that my ability to predict the future is not great. And by the way, this is something that I really enjoy about what I've done and what I do is I'm perfectly happy with being wrong. In fact, I'm delighted to be wrong, because it means that there's so much to learn. Now, it's at the time when something starts pushing you to think that maybe you're wrong, it feels kind of uncomfortable. Nobody likes at first time to be wrong, but in hindsight, you look at your wrongness and say, well, I was wrong, but actually that wrongness had some interesting aspects to it. And I think that's, with respect to AI and in fact to its relationships to linguistics and philosophy and cognitive science, I think that most of us have been and still are wrong. But let's try to be wrong in interesting and useful ways.